Greg Lee back with us, along with KTVU political analyst Brian Sobel. Brian, I'll start with you. The president saying tonight America is back based on what we heard, what we saw tonight. Did the president make that case?
Well, I think he made it to his base, to Republicans. I don't think Dems bought it at all. We saw that in the chambers tonight. It was as Greg pointed out, a very, very long speech. And it was the encyclopedia of all the subjects that we've seen on the campaign trail and just every time Donald Trump gives a speech.
But you have to think about at this point, too, there's a time limit that we've talked about, and then you've mentioned, Greg, that these are the talking points of why he wants these things to happen, but the impacts that might change how voters feel about it.
And part of the reason that he got voted in, and the biggest reason, was because he said he wanted a change. He wanted to fix the economy. He wanted to lower prices. And he addressed that a couple of times tonight. He blamed the egg prices on President Biden, didn't bring up the bird flu, but certainly made a concerted effort to speak to voters about the cost of everyday goods, and that he's working on that. But the conversation now is how much leeway does he get to figure that out, particularly now with these tariffs in place?
Yes, and you know, the entire speech again, talking about the very familiar subjects, not a lot of specifics. So, you know, hitting kind of the highlights, and all in all, again, I think people who like Donald Trump will have found the speech tonight to be very good.
How does the Democratic Party respond here? And I'm saying it's 20 months away, but the midterm elections, they watched the speech tonight. They want a piece of this pie eventually. Otherwise, you're talking about 4 years or 2 years. What do you think, Brian?
Democrats,
what do they do right now?
Well, Democrats have to come up with some leaders that people around the country can get behind. I think the party drifted too far left, too progressive. Donald Trump took advantage of that. He made a reference in the speech tonight to the fact that the American public elected him to make change, and he's making them, which is akin to when Barack Obama years ago said elections have consequences. This is what America in the majority wanted.
So what's the next big event? I mean, we're talking about the budget coming up and a government shutdown, and that will change things as well. Or is it the tariffs that we're going to be focused on first, and really reciprocal tariffs?
I think you start with tariffs and you look at that day, you know, April 30th also is 100 days. 100 days in office, right? And going back to that point also, not a cohesive message for Democrats, not a messenger at this point. They have to figure out what that looks like, because that look from Al Green was not a good one tonight. It didn't show the decorum that you'd expect in a setting like that. And also, some Democrats walked out, but there was not a clear message of what they wanted.
But I feel like we've been saying message through the election and now. And so is there any sign that we're any closer to it, to seeing that?
It seemed like Slotkin was starting to get there, right?
Right.
Speaking to the middle class, speaking to voters.
Which is what Dems have to do. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has run borrowing an old phrase, a shock and awe campaign. He's running so fast that Dems cannot keep up with him to try to block anything that he's trying to do. Yes, they've gone to court, had some decisions in their favor, temporary, but he is running very fast, and he's outpacing Dems right now in this country.
Not to go back to you, Greg, here, when you say 100 days, so you think that Americans are giving Donald Trump and this administration 100 days because prices are high, interest rates haven't dropped probably as much as they want, grocery stores are expensive. So within 100 days, if they don't see change,
well, I think you talk about the runway,
pushback.
Right? You talk about Mike Johnson saying, "I am all on board with you, Speaker of the House. We control the House and the Senate by slim margins." But you're looking at a government that is behind you at this point. So they are navigating that space with House Republicans as well as Republicans in the Senate, trying to figure out how they do what the president wants them to do, while making sure that they're keeping their constituents happy. We saw it this week where some of those town halls with Republicans where they're getting pushback from federal employees who've lost their job. So is that you got to fix that tide.
So unified tonight, certainly we saw unification tonight, but as we move forward, do we see that changing?
Well, just look at the situation with Zelensky. The Republicans are not monolithic. They don't all think alike on something like Ukraine. I mean, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian flags flying around America. People care about Ukraine, and they don't necessarily agree with the president on Ukraine, and not all Republicans do either. So those are the kinds of divisive issues that actually pull people apart. And Donald Trump's mission is to try to keep everybody together.
Because the midterms are coming up, and individually in those districts, they do not like what's happening. It'll show.
Right,
it'll show up.
Brian, appreciate the conversation.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.